All right, welcome back, everyone. I have a special guest on. I have Jaina Palasigi from Premier Host Management, and we kind of connected through some programs out there, social media. But I want to bring her on because she's doing some amazing things out there. So welcome, Jaina.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So why don't you kind of fill my audience in about what you're doing? Maybe let's start with the real estate side. What are you doing on that side?
Sure. So for real estate, I started investing in late 2021. And now I have five single family homes, which are all long term rentals in Evansville, Indiana. And I also have one quadplex, all in Evansville, Indiana. So that's my long term portfolio, which I actually own. Then on the side, to supplement that passive income with more active income in real estate, I own a co hosting company called Premier Host Management. So we co host midterm rentals remotely. So I'm based in Orange County, California, but we host for property owners in San Diego, Montgomery, Alabama, Houston, Texas, and Cleveland, Ohio. So that's me on the real estate end.
So I hear a lot about, long-term rentals, short-term rentals, midterm rentals. But co-hosting, I don't think a lot of people are too, familiar with that. So how would you explain co-hosting?
Sure thing. So, co hosting is very similar to property management, but you are managing a property either on behalf of a property owner or with a property owner that's specifically for short term or vacation rentals or midterm rentals. You can't really be a co host for long term rentals. You need to be a manager at that point, which requires different licenses and collecting money a different way. So, to get around that licensing and all of those particular regulations, we call it a co-host for MTRs or STRs.
Oh, so I know Orange County is like a very good appreciating real estate market. So why not start in your backyard or did you do that?
I did. So, first of all, when it came to investing myself, I was absolutely priced out of the market. It is just too expensive here, right? So that's what led me to the Midwest because my business partner came up to me one point. He's 6 years younger. And he said, Jaina, I bought a house. And I was like, what? Where? And he's like, Indiana. And I was like, no way. And he said, it was 38K. And I was like, what? No way. And then I just couldn't believe they were literally single family homes, much cheaper than the cars in my neighborhood. That's when I got interested in the Midwest. But when it comes to co-hosting, we did start out, me and my business partner, in Orange County because everyone says start in your backyard. But I guess we were just not getting lucky finding property owners who are willing to sublease to us essentially and put it on Airbnb. First of all, Orange County is very strict. They just recently banned short-term rentals in Santa Ana, and that used to be the go-to city in the county for vacation rentals, but now it's literally banned in the last month or so. So we just kept being active in different Facebook groups. And one day, someone in a random Facebook group we were in asked, does anyone co host? And right away, my business partner was like, we do. And that's how we got our first client. And it was in Benton Harbor, Michigan. Random city I've never heard of in my life, but that's how we got our first client because we knew how to have systems and create an infrastructure that allowed us to co-host remotely. So essentially, that widened the opportunity for us because we could say yes to anyone in the beginning at that point.
I have so many questions right now. So, but your story sounds very similar to kind of mine. Like Hawaii is also a very expensive market. You kind of priced out. And then my friend was investing in Pittsburgh and same thing. He's like, I'm buying these houses for this much. And I'm like, what? Like a completed house, a full house? And I think that was the same effect it had on you. And then, you get into it and you start really realizing about this kind of passive income. I mean, we know it's not completely passive, but as far as generating extra income, getting appreciation, tax benefits. And then once you start doing that, the whole world kind of opens up to you. And like you said, you started looking at midterm rentals, short-term rentals. And so, like, how would you maybe, I don't know if there's a big difference, but how would you describe, like, I hear Airbnb arbitrage compared to co-hosting?
Sure. So Airbnb arbitrage is when you are actually the renter. So you are the one paying the rent to the property owner, and then you sublease it on Airbnb. And essentially, whatever you make on Airbnb or whatever platform you're using, and your rent is the margin you keep. Whereas co-hosting, you don't have responsibility for any of the expenses. So it's technically a lower risk strategy to get into real estate because you're just managing the operations, but it is the owner that's paying the utilities, that's paying the expenses, the repairs, and of course the mortgage and everything. And then on top of that, your co-hosting fee as well. But this is something a lot of owners need, especially if they're investors or really busy people who have a W-2 that's like a lawyer, a doctor, a nurse, and maybe they don't have the time to operate the rental on their own, which they thought they did. And you know what? They're like, as long as the numbers work for me, I'm getting a little bit of margin and profit. I'm happy because maybe I'm in the game for appreciation and this is just another way to get additional cash flow. So that's typically who at least our company targets as co-hosts, are busy W-2 professionals who want to increase their revenue while having completely hands off of all the operations of their assets.
I was just going to ask you that. Like, why do people not just do it themselves? And like you're saying, if they're busy, they want to be hands off. And it's actually kind of funny because I mean, I don't call it co-hosting. I guess I should, but I'm actually doing so I'm with Remax Honolulu currently, but I'm
Nice.
hosting properties for other owners, short-term rentals in Waikiki. And that same thing that you're talking about, how I don't really have a lot of risk on my plate. I don't have to pay the mortgage. I just got to make sure I'm generating a certain amount of revenue for these owners. And I don't really have any risk on the table though. So I think it's the same principle as co-hosting. And I love that. I think that's the great way to do, short-term, mid-term rentals. And I think you talked about it on a podcast I heard recently. Definitely those first few clients, or getting the first few clients, are challenging, because it's not like just a typical long-term rental. I mean, you kind of have got to have proof of showing that you can do this. So how did you folks get your first client?
It was literally on the Facebook group. So, first of all, our process was, I would say, very traditionally based. My business partner, I love courses and coaching programs. So we invested over $20,000 in learning how to do arbitrage, learning how to co-host, learning Airbnb, because we're the kind of people who went to school. So we feel like we need to know everything before we get started. But now that I'm a business owner, I realize you just need to jump and learn that way. You just got to figure it out and just get started because it's so easy to get into analysis paralysis. So, you come to that point where you're like, what do I say if I don't have any properties of my own? Or how can I convince someone? But the thing is, in our experiences, we've become really good communicators, right? And relationship builders, and we enjoy networking. And at the end of the day, if you're able to build a connection with someone who feels like they can trust you and you have any kind of connection with them, that can be the deciding factor in you creating a partnership with someone despite not having your own rentals, despite being in the beginning of your business. It really comes down to being a people person and understanding their needs and being able to help them meet their goals.
I love that. I think that's kind of why I'm doing this YouTube channel and connecting with people. I just love hearing everyone's story and just relate. And like you said, it's just all about communication, and it helps you, talk to other people, investors or people that are doing deals, and you're just getting your foot in the door. So I love that. But so you talked about, Facebook group networking. I mean, so the client just appeared in there, or how did that happen?
So we just joined a lot of real estate based and Airbnb based Facebook groups. And someone, actually, it happens often. People will often ask for a co host, and it kind of just everyone goes into the DMs and fights for that lead, essentially. But, we were able to hop on a call with them. And the reason why he felt like he connected with us is because he was Filipino. So we're Filipino as well. And I think what the deciding factor was for him genuinely is he had his mom on the call, and she was able to speak Tagalog to me and I could respond back in English. And that's what he needed to feel like he could trust us. And that was literally our first client, right? I can't even speak. He generously allowed us to essentially take it a little bit slower and learn the ropes because he just had a certain need that we were able to meet, which is essentially helping him break even and then eventually getting cash flow, which we helped him do. And then he got another property in Houston that became our second property. And then he referred us to another owner in Montgomery, and that became our third property. So I started documenting my journey, like share and on YouTube. And that's how I got my other two clients. So the fourth client was someone, a colleague and a friend from church who was watching my content on Instagram saying, like, hey, I think I want to get into Airbnb. That was our San Diego property. Then another person reached out to me, my friend from college's husband, who is a busy lawyer, got a midterm rental, thought he could manage it, realized it was more than he could handle. He couldn't even respond to the inquiries on Airbnb, and it was just losing out on all of these guests potentially. And he's like, I need help. I can't do this on my own. I thought I could. That was our fifth client. So, combination in the beginning is just, first of all, having the courage to figure out, or just having the courage to understand that you could figure it out. It's okay not to know everything. It really is. And then with time, you become more experienced, obviously. And then organically through social media, that's how you generate clients as well. Very, very underrated, I feel, strategy for getting clients for any business in general.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's funny. I mean, we might have to have another episode on kind of messages from the guests through Airbnb and how
Oh,
challenging that can be. And I
sure.
think I mention it a lot of times on my lives and things. It's weird some of the questions you get and what people are complaining about or asking for. So that could be a whole new episode. But there is an interesting one I think that did happen to you, and like you're talking about, messages, and sometimes you just got to figure it out, and you actually use some AI tools to help you through this situation. I believe it saved you what, $13,000 booking or something. But yeah, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure thing. So we have a property in Houston and it's pet friendly. And it was a complete renovation. It took a really long time. So one of the biggest lessons I learned as a co-host is do not work for free. Understand the expectations that if the owner is going to ask you to help set up the property, you need to charge a fee. Because what was happening is, of course, we were trying to be helpful, but we didn't establish when our help would start. And it should have started when we started, actually getting it rented. But somehow we got pulled in to, just trying to be helpful. It's our first client, so we're trying to provide as much value as possible. And it just took really long for the property to get renovated because they were uncovering so many things. So what happened was we got our first midterm rental booking and we were elated. We're like, oh my gosh, it is 60 days. They're paying 13K upfront direct booking. Super excited, right? But then, being remote, obviously you don't know 100% of the property, especially as it's getting renovated. We totally forgot that one side of the property is not fenced in. It was just completely open to the neighbors. So when the guests showed up, they had two Labradors. And then they were looking like really distressed in the ring cameras that we have facing the backyard. And they messaged us and they said, the backyard is not fully fenced in. Our dogs will run out into the street. Right. And then me and my business partner, Paul, said, oh my God, that's true. That's right. We didn't think about that. You're right. And then Paul was like, what do we say? And I was like, I don't know. So I said, let's just ask ChatGPT. Right. He's like, okay, you do it. And I was like, all right, all right. So I just, plugged in the ChatGPT. Really quick tip is a lot of people don't use ChatGPT to its optimal potential. And one of the easiest ways to use it better than most people do is by giving it a role. Because when you give it a role in the beginning and then put your ask, it will show them exactly how they think. Because if you say, respond to this guest message who is very stressed, you are a lawyer, that's going to give you a different message than respond to this guest that is very stressed. You are an Airbnb host, right? So we put, you are an Airbnb host. You have guests that just arrived to the property. They're very distressed because one side of the fence is not fenced in and their two dogs will run out. How would you respond to this guest? And it gave us this long explanation, super professional, super empathetic. And of course, we had to quality control it a little bit, sent it over to the guest. And they were just so appreciative that we saw it from their side. And guess what? They had their contractor make a makeshift fence to gate in on their own terms, on with their money, right? So that their dogs wouldn't run out, and we were able to keep that booking. If we didn't have ChatGPT, honestly, I'm not really sure what I would have responded. I probably would have been like, sorry, um, that was an oversight. I don't know what I would have said. Honestly, I had no idea, but so glad that there are tools out there that we can use now. And instead of being afraid of them, use them to our advantage.
Totally agree. I mean, you may not use the exact thing that it spits out for you, but it at least gives you an idea and thought process. Okay, these are a couple of things I may want to include. So yeah, AI has been super helpful in this real estate journey. Even just the YouTube's channel and posting things, it helps you kind of get some content. So I totally agree. And like you said, yeah, there's different things you can do to make it work more efficiently. Like there's different prompts you can put in, and as you do, I think there was another tip you also mentioned. Some people put too much information after a while. They keep using the same. I don't know if it
All
called a
right.
conversation. Yeah.
So you want to keep the chat with the same topic. So if you're talking about Airbnb one topic, keep it on that chat. If you want to talk about a new topic, create a new chat and start talking about midterm rentals, start talking about long-term real estate, because it keeps learning like as you go. And if you're just feeding it all this information, it can't focus on what you want it to focus on.
So what other tools do you use in help managing, your during your co-hosting?
Absolutely have a tech stack, because at the end of the day, we're remote operators, so we rely heavily on technology. So when it comes to the software, we like Monday.com. That is our best friend at the moment. We first started out with Notion, but then Notion was just a little too complicated. It was too much of a blank slate, and some people like that, but I need a little bit more structure personally. So we use Monday.com to essentially create task lists, monitor different activities that need to get done, whether it's coordinating vendors or making sure that the runner is on a schedule to put out or return the trash bins at certain properties. It really helps us build out customizations so that we know every single thing that's going on in all of the properties, and all our team can stay on the same page. So we use Monday. We also use for communication Slack. And with Slack for co hosting, we set up our channels so each channel is its own property. So, for example, if someone receives a receipt, right, that the property owner paid the HVAC, representative, then we're going to put that in there. And then it's our virtual assistance task to update the monthly reports for the property owners so that they have all their bookkeeping in order. So that's typically on the software end. And of course, we love our channel manager, which is hospitable. So that's where we're able to put all our listings in one place and sync our calendars with Airbnb and Verbo, so that if there's any overlapping, that won't happen, at least with those two platforms. But you can also put Furnish Finder bookings manually. And it really helps with the algorithm on Airbnb because it sends automated messages right away, and it helps you vet your guest while you're asleep, right? Because we're on West Coast time, we have East Coast clients, right? So they'll be texting us, the guests, sometimes at 4 a.m. and you're like, I cannot do that right now. But with Hospitable, if we get an inquiry, it would immediately do an automated message, ask them the 4 vetting questions that we have to make sure that they're a guest that we can approve and have them in our property. So, I mean, there's a lot of technology, but that's just like a sneak peek of the software that we have.
Yeah. Is there any like cameras or lock features or anything that you have on your units?
So, as co host, especially remotely, we do not start operating until all of that hardware technology is installed. So, that includes ring cameras, security cameras on the outside. It includes a smart lock. We prefer Schlage because you can automate the codes for the guests. And typically, we use the last 4 numbers of their phone number. So, it's just easier for them to remember, and that gets automated, and hospitable. Then we also use, especially in our cold and hot climate properties, smart thermostats so we can control the range of temperature, because you don't want them to be blasting the AC in the summer. That's just going to make your electricity bill go wild. You know what I mean? So that's an excellent one to have as well. And of course, Wi-Fi. So at the very basic need, we need, that ring camera, so we could see outside. We need a smart lock and then the smart thermostat. That's our very basic technology. People can get fancier. So we have StayFi, which essentially is a Wi-Fi system that allows you to collect email addresses of all your guests. So you could essentially build out your CRM that way. And then some people have noise monitors, but that's more so for like short-term rentals, especially if it's in an apartment and you have shared walls. You definitely want to be able to see if it's noisy, right? So that they could send automated messages that the guests are being loud. It doesn't record anything, it just measures decibels of sound. Just want to be clear. And there's certain models like the Minute that even detect cigarette smoke. You as a firefighter, I'm sure, can appreciate. So, and myself in tobacco cessation. So if you don't want smoking in your property, it will, detect smoking. Yeah. So bunch of technology that's available to co-host that you could do this remotely.
And a lot of this was this kind of trial and error, or this is information that you got, like you said, in those groups that you joined and the coaching you
Yeah.
paid for.
Coaching and courses, so we knew how to set it up right away. So I think that build upon our confidence as well, because even though we didn't have our own rentals, we're like, we know how to set it up, we know how to operate. And that came across in the discovery calls, because when they had a question, we were able to answer them like, this is how we do it. And they're like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. And what we do when we're talking to property owners is we'd say how this technology, even though at first glance seems like a bigger investment, is actually going to save them money for their investment, right? Because especially a smart thermostat, saving your utilities. And then when it comes to the smart lock, you don't have to have someone manually give someone the keys every single time. You know what I mean? That costs money too. So we help them understand that as well.
I don't think you need me anymore because that was going to be my next question. I was going to,
Oh,
well, because I was going to ask you that some of the struggles that I noticed with some of the owners that we deal with, it's hard to kind of explain to them why they may want these features. So you're not paying for these upgrades out of your pocket, right? The owners are the ones that are paying for these changes, and you just present to them like, oh, this is going to benefit you this way, and okay, yeah, we tried that too. It didn't work too well.
and that's also why we're very selective with our clients. We don't host any two-bedroom properties. They're all three-bedroom and above. One, first of all, because we're in a partnership, so that we get a revenue that's enough and it's worth our time, right? So that's one. And two, if you're working with people who have larger homes and clients who are typically professionals, like the doctors, the nurses, the lawyers, they're more willing to invest in the things that you need. If you're going to work with a client who's trying to nickel and dime you, that's a hard pass for us. We're not that desperate to have to get so many clients with ones, one units everywhere, and you're not making that much margin. We're very, very selective, because at the end of the day, co-hosting is active. It could be very stressful when things happen, especially when you're managing so many properties. A bunch of things can happen at the same time, and we've definitely experienced that.
We didn't touch on this off camera, but I was just thinking, so is your vision, because this was kind of my vision on why I also wanted to, I guess, manage some of the short-term rentals, was I wanted to see how, I guess, remotely I could make it so that if I do invest remotely to a short-term rental in another state, I can see how much hands off I can make, or I'm not hands off, but how automated I could make it. Is that kind of your vision also? Is this kind of like a test run to see if you can do it?
So the test run for us was twofold. It first, co-hosting remotely um, helps us understand how to optimize systems, right? So how much can you have automated so that you can decrease the time that you need as much as possible? So that's one, right? And it also helps you know how to self-manage yourself if you actually go ahead and start to invest in your own property, because that is the goal, right? You do more active like co-hosting so you could build capital for your own investments eventually. And then two, because I'm a co-host in different markets, I see which markets perform better. So I can see which ones work best for me and my
Hmm.
budget. So I currently invest in Evansville, Indiana long term, but my next market is going to be Cleveland because I co-host there, because I see that the property is continuously booked with midterm rental stays. And we didn't even get professional photos for the property, but it already got booked right away because it's near Cleveland Clinic and people are getting treatments for long durations of time. Of course, you have insurance claims, And then the properties, you could get a decent 3 bed, 1 bath, single family home for like under 150K, right? So your mortgage at that point is maybe 12, 1300, and we're getting like 27, 28, 2900 for midterm rental. So your spread is nice considering the cost of the home. So that's what's really cool about being a remote co-host, because you see different markets and you're like, if I was just co-hosting in Benton Harbor, I probably would just go in Benton Harbor because that's what I know. But now that I've seen 5 markets, I would actually go for Cleveland because I can compare all of them and see what best fits my budget and the margins I'm looking for.
Well, I'm gonna call someone out right now. She said she met you at an event. Her name is Renzi, but
Oh
um,
yeah, she said to tell you hi.
yeah. So I'm gonna tell her though, don't change markets because I know she just bought something in Columbus and she's gonna be like,
Oh
oh,
yeah, I
Jaina
mean,
said Cleveland. I'm gonna jump to Cleveland now. So I'm gonna tell her, no, just stay where you're at.
you should stay. I mean, at the end of the day, like if you find a good deal, you find a good deal. You know what I mean? Markets you can see in general, but hey, if you have a larger margin in, Columbus or wherever she is, run with it because you're looking for that optimized spread, right? So deals can be found anywhere, truly.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of my one of my biggest message too is kind of there's tons of great markets out there. And I think that's like you kind of mentioned it earlier, that analysis paralysis, and sometimes that's what prevents people from even getting started, right? So yeah, once you find a good market or you have connections there or relationships, I think that's the best way to get your foot in the door. But yeah,
Absolutely.
so this was amazing. I mean, I love all this information. I think, people are, especially where, prices are, rates are, the yields out there are kind of compressed right now. People are looking for other ways to make deals work. So, like you said, co-hosting is a great way to get some knowledge and test out markets and see what works. So, anyone out there, reach out to you. But I did get so much responses. I shared one of your reels, I believe, and you're traveling to Hawaii soon, I believe, for a wedding, and you're talking about getting a free night and things like that. So there seemed like there was more interest in travel and credit card hacks from my followers. So what are you doing on that side?
So, when me and my business partner originally wanted to start a business, we wanted to do arbitrage, but we didn't want to use our own capital again because you're the renter. You need to put the deposit down, you need to do the first month payment, etc. So we took courses on how to get business funding, and one of the courses we took combined business funding with travel hacking, which I've actually always been interested in, traveling in general. So through the time, I realized that, oh my gosh, real estate investors are in an optimal position to travel hack because you have so many operating and business expenses. If we only knew how to put certain expenses through a credit card to collect points and miles, you could redeem that for nearly free travel just by being an investor, right? It's literally a benefit, but it also takes a learning curve. So I'm, a travel hacker and also real estate investor. So I, go on, travel hacking podcasts and real estate podcasts, but people don't really put it together, because at the end of the day, it's about learning certain strategies to get you an optimal solution. And what I've found, being in a lot of real estate investor communities, is they're always like, I want to be a real estate investor so I could build wealth so that I can travel, right? I want more free time. I want to, leave my W 2. But then I tell them, but guess what? You can do that now. You can travel nearly free, even luxuriously now without even owning any properties if you're a real estate investor. So through time, I'll give you, is it okay if I give you an example of how this actually looks like? Because it sounds nice, right? It sounds nice. People are like, okay, how do you do this? Right?
Well, of course. I mean, that's what everyone replied back to my reshare of your reel. They wanted to know all about credit card hacks and traveling.
Let's do this. So I'm going to talk about one of the first redemptions that made like one of my lifetime goals come true. And that was to take a business class flight. I've always loved travel, but your girl has been in economy all her life. So once this happened for me, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know. I just needed real estate to help me get to this goal. So when I got my third single family home in Evansville, I was able to get a commercial loan through a local vendor. It was a subject to appraisal loan, which allowed me to wrap the renovation costs into the loan. So I didn't have to put any money down. So all I needed to do was during the renovation time, pay the mortgage on my own, which was good for me because, first of all, the mortgage was only interest at that time. And then it took maybe 2 to 3 months to get renovated. And that was so much cheaper than me putting like 20, 25% down. I think it was only, I don't know, maybe $700 a month that I was paying for like 3 months. Right. And I'm like, I'm cool with that. I'm cool. So the lender sends me a check for $26,000. And I was like, what's this check for? And he said, oh, that's for you to pay the contractors to do all the renovations. And I said, oh, so you're just going to give me a check? And they're like, yeah, that's what you use. And I was like, okay. Knowing travel hacking, I was like, hold on here. Let's pause with this check I got going on. And I said, I'm going to open up credit cards to get the sign up bonuses for those credit cards, put my contractor expenses on my credit cards, and just pay it off with the check that I got that I deposited into my bank account. So what happened there was I accumulated hundreds of thousands of points with that 26K. And I'm sure people are watching this podcast right now have way higher expenses than 26K. So imagine what you could do. And what I did with those points was I got a round trip flight on Emirates business class to Milan that cost over $6,000. And I also got a 3 day stay at the five-star luxury resort called Grand Hotel Victoria in Lake Como, all by using my points that I accumulated with someone else's money. And I got an asset out of it that gets cash flow and builds wealth. So that literally changed the game for me, Mark. I was like, so are you telling me I can get an asset that builds wealth, generates me cash flow without using my own money, and a free luxury vacation? Is this serious? Is this serious? And once I did that, I needed to share it with everyone. And that's why my Instagram focuses on showing real estate investors how they could use the just regular expenses to get nearly free travel. So it's possible. It is possible.
Yeah, we kind of touched on it off camera, right? Like there's just so many things out there and opportunities. It's just people either they think it's a scam or, it's just they think only the wealthy can do it. And, that's why you're trying to share what you're doing. And I think, yeah, like you're saying, everyone wants to travel or everyone wants to maybe earn extra income, but they haven't been able to bridge the two of them together. And that's what you're saying, as an investor. And now you're bringing the credit card travel hacks and you're kind of blending it all into one to maximize that. And I think you even touch on it also too is so are you focusing more also on like building business funding?
I do that as well. So I do a lot. So I'm a business funding advisor for Freedom Funders. And we get millions of dollars in funding each quarter for business owners. And there's actually a lot of real estate business owners that come to us for funding, specifically flippers. The reason why is because they just need that quick capital to do their project, turn it around, then pay off the business funding afterwards, and then go about their day. So they just keep recycling the funding that they need because they know their numbers and they know how to use it. Otherwise, there's a lot of new business owners that don't even realize, even if you don't have an LLC, even if you haven't made any money, there's still ways to get access to funding with 0% APR business credit cards. So that's where all of these things clash, right? Because business funding gets you capital you need for your real estate expenses, but also can generate points you could use for travel, which can produce either scaling your business or more properties in your portfolio. And that's why the algorithm of Instagram hates me. They absolutely hate me because I have too many niches. They're like, what is this? This girl needs to decide, right? I don't know where to put her. Because in the beginning, I got naturally niched into travel hacking. But then I just kept combating it because like I love travel, but I want to teach more about the real estate side and business funding because genuinely all these three things are a part of what helps me reach my goals, right? So they all are connected.
Yeah, I think what relates all of them is they're all related to money, right? Like
Exactly.
understanding how money works. And I'm not sure about your upbringing, but it's the same thing for me. It's kind of like we're not supposed to talk about money. Money is evil. And you really realize that just money can allow you to do a lot of good things, whether it's even just donating money, helping other people. But money is just another tool. And I think that's what your message or what you're trying to share is that there's so many opportunities out there. So like if people go to your channel, your Instagram, are they able to find out information on like what credit cards you recommend and things like that?
Absolutely, but they're gonna have to dig through my content really because there's just a lot. The easiest way is just DM me. I'm always happy to assist anyone who's trying to figure out the best credit card for them because I do get that question often. They're like, Jaina, what's the best credit card? And what they mistakenly think is that I'm just gonna spit out any credit card. But what I actually do is I ask them like five more questions. So I say, okay, well, what is your goal with the credit card? Do you want it for funding? Do you want it for free vacations? Who do you bank with? Right? What credit cards have you gotten in the last 6 to 12 months? And where do you want to go? Right? Because that information is going to help me best create a strategy or recommendation for the credit cards that fit that person because not everyone has the same goals, right? There's no one magic credit card that is good for every person. So that's why if anyone just says, get this credit card, I would take that with a grain of salt because you need a little bit more information based on the person's goals and what they want to do with the credit card. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people don't know how to use credit cards correctly, and that could get them into some deep trouble. I always tell people that you might like this analogy. Credit cards are like fire, right? And fire can help warm your food. It can help warm your house, but can also burn your food and burn your house down. So it's up to the user to know how to use it correctly to optimize its function.
I like that. I'm gonna have to steal that.
Go for it since you're a firefighter. I think it's perfect for your brand.
But you also mentioned banking. Like how do you stay organized, with all your expenses and all the things that you're doing?
Sure. I do have a habit of checking my bank accounts every day, right? Because someone who's really into banking, really into credit cards, you need to have certain systems to make sure that you don't slip because the penalty can be great. If you miss a payment, that's going to hit your credit score really negatively. So the first thing that you could do is first is prevention. And one of the preventative things you could do is put on auto pay for all your credit cards. That way, just in case you forget, it will get paid and you won't get the late payment. The second is develop good habits, which is me checking my credit cards. The third is you can actually change the statement close date of your credit card. So if you're someone that has multiple, perhaps you have some that close like on the 15th of the month and then some that close on the 30th. That way, it's halved for your credit cards every time you need to make payments and you're not having to pay at all these different times, right? And then lastly, for people who are hyper organized, you can create an Excel or a Google Sheet. But what really happens in reality is for people who are like maximizers like me, who have a lot of credit cards, you're not using all of them all at once, right? I actually, here we go. Let me show some stuff. Here's my wallet and it's literally an accordion. Everything is specifically organized in a way so I know what's for what expense. But I'm really only using maybe maximum 5 credit cards at one time. All the other credit cards that kind of just stay in my shoebox and I don't really use them unless it's for certain occasions. So it does take, an organized person, but also know that you don't have to get this intense. You could be a real estate investor and have a very simple strategy where you just have like a 2 or 3 card setup. You charge all your expenses on each card that earns you the most amount of points per expense. And that will generate you all the points you need to take nearly free trips every year.
Yeah, that's way too organized for me, I think. That's
Yeah, it's not for everyone, but that's what I said. Like it is still possible to keep it simplistic. Because when people ask me to create a credit card infrastructure, I ask them, do you like things simple or are you a maximizer? And they know which category they fall into. They're like, I'm a maximizer. I want to get the most possible. Okay, great. And then someone who has that mindset already is like typically organized, where someone's like, I like it simple. I don't want to think about it. They like automations. They like things like kind of regular, not too crazy. So you can do both systems essentially as a real estate investor and still earn like millions of points with your business expenses.
Yeah, I like to keep things as simple as possible. I do like to stay organized, but I like it simplicity. And I think that's actually kind of how we connected through social media, through remote use BaseLane for our banking kind of landlord software systems. And I love it. So I know you've been using it a lot longer than I have. So is that the same reasons why you like to use Base, or can you kind of talk about BaseLane a little bit?
Sure thing. So one of the things that really drew me to Baselane was the ability to use digital credit cards. Because look at me with the credit cards again, right? Because as a co-host, I like to have one vendor assigned to our particular credit card because that allows me to track that particular vendor very easily in bookkeeping. Especially when you start scaling, you have more properties, bookkeeping gets very complex. So when I'm looking at my, my reports, I can easily see like, oh, all these charges were from the cleaner. Oh, all these charges were from the handyman. So that's something I really like. So that's the organization of it as well. And another thing is they have the annual percentage yield, much higher than your typical bank account. So I don't like my money not working, right? I don't like it just sitting and losing value to inflation. And when I heard that Baselane has this like significantly higher annual percentage yield for their checkings, I was like, okay, I'm in, let's do this. So that's what really drew me to Baselane because as someone who is always exploring and learning about different credit cards, different banks, especially as a business funding specialist, I want to always stay on top of the fintech that's going on because things always change. The landscape of economy, of real estate, of anything is just always changing. And if we get left in the dust, you're going to be like that old person everyone makes fun of that doesn't know how to open up a PDF. I remember thinking about that when I was like in college, like this professor doesn't know how to open a PDF. And now we're seeing kids know how to code. And I'm like, I don't know how to code. Excuse me, sorry. 6041, stop your way. 6041. And then now I'm seeing kids that know how to code. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like the old person that can't open a PDF. I don't know how to code now. So I try to keep up as much as possible, at least with the things I find interesting.
Yeah, I love, and now I just learned something new. So for the base lane, you have separate virtual credit cards for like each vendor. I never thought about
Yes.
doing that. Yeah, I love it because it's so customizable too. And then I like it for the bookkeeping features where you can separate everything. And even so, a lot of times I get like one receipt from, a vendor and it might be multiple jobs, but it's easy. I can split, actually the payment and break it down by this is that job that they performed. And I like that they have the security deposits. You can keep the security deposits separate. So, and I love what they're working on. They're working on the maintenance coordination soon and tenant communications. So those are some features that might be coming out soon. But yeah, I love working with Baseline. But yeah, we might have to do this again because I there was a few things I wanted to also dig in. But maybe next time I can have you back on because I know you talked about setting up your business structure. I believe you set it up as a S corp, and that's
Yes.
something you mentioned that you might have done differently. But yeah, we can dig into that next time because I did the whole LLC structure and the Wyoming entity holding company, and those are all
A
things
lot.
that
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
But this was fun. Yeah, we'll do this again. And I know I told you I do lives and maybe we'll get you on the lives once in a while and see if you want to hop on. But I'm sure, yeah, this was a lot of fun. So we'll do this again.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Mark.
Actually, oh, before we go, I forgot. Where can people find you?
Oh, you can find me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. So my handle is Jaina underscore Ann. So that's Jaina underscore ANNE. And I'm pretty quick. If you DM me, have any questions, I'm always happy to help.
Yeah, and I'll put all your links below and we'll do this again. Thanks, Jaina.